Okay, so I need to make a piece, a film. And the guidelines are that it needs to be a documentary. It should be experimental, and it should address, in some capacity, inequity in education. So here's my idea. And the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Audre Lorde kind of talks about how even within minority groups, silencing frequently occurs. And I think that when trying to dissect such a complicated issue, where minority voices are not only so important, but so seldom heard, I think the best format for this is going to be for me to interview people completely separately, so that their answers can be grounded solely in personal truth and not be at risk of being influenced in the way that they might in a group setting. So I think that with a project that's going to be stressing individualism so much, it is important to start by defining who the individual is and getting to know them in a way that feels right for them and that isn't based in definitions or categories that are handed down to them.
All right, question 1. What is your name?
My name is Bella Kelso.
Hope Judge.
Alexandra Petratos.
My name is Kobe Mekhi Johnson.
Alice Jewel Boiadjian.
Alexa Venereo.
Izzy King.
Jacob Meyerson.
My name is Justin Pierce.
Right. Question 2, how do you describe yourself? You can use conventional terms like gender or race or anything else, phrases, lyrics, adjective, whatever feels right for you in regards to how you see yourself in the world.
I am a senior at DePaul. I am African American and I am visually impaired.
I am a 19-year-old girl, goes to DePaul, majoring in psychology, and hoping to be a therapist.
I am female. I am Armenian. I am a student.
I would describe myself as an Black. I would describe myself as a Black Asian American. I'm also a quarter Korean. I'm queer. I identify as gay as well as non-binary.
I'm a straight, white, cisgendered, heterosexual man.
I am a white, pansexual woman, or queer woman. I don't really like to shove myself into those kinds of boxes. I don't know, I'm just gonna love whoever I love.
After that, I think I need to probably ask them a question about their own personal experience with equity or inclusivity, or the lack of the two, in education. Because while the focus of this project is so broad, I think trying to source an equally broad answer to the questions I'm posing is going to be a really ineffective way of approaching that. I think we've all learned by now that these issues of race and class and gender and inclusivity and equity and the list goes on aren't going to be fixed in one fell swoop. We're not going to magically one day stumble across a cure-all that we just hadn't thought of. It's going to be a war really, that we have to just fight battle by battle until the whole thing is won. You can't eat the elephant all at once. That's probably a bad metaphor. I'm pretty sure elephants are endangered. What is your experience with inclusivity in education?
My experience with inclusivity in education has been very much a lack thereof, I would say. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to high schools that were PWI, predominantly white institutions, and so a lot of the education that we were taught was mainly about white individuals or white history, and if it was Black history, it was, the regulars like slavery or civil rights movement. We were not taught really about any Asian history at all, and no queer history at all, no queer Black history, because Black history is queer history, so none of that at all. And I would say it really kind of misinformed my education as an adult, because a lot of the mistakes I found myself making now as an individual, specifically with my identity, I feel like could have been avoided if I had learned these situations in school.
I was on what was called the Bridges Club at my Catholic high school, and that was their equivalent of the GSA, but we were not allowed to call it that or anything with something gay blatantly in the title, because it was fought every step of the way.
Being someone who has a disability, I feel that throughout my educational journey, I have sort of felt excluded from a lot of things because of my visual impairment.
I was raised in an environment because I'm from Orange County, and Orange County is like notoriously white and rich. So I kind of grew up in like a bubble. I think it's interesting to, like, my perspective on inclusivity is important, but it may not necessarily be as important as the people who are affected by it.
I am biracial in a race that most people don't even know of, but I'm also half white. So there's a certain level of like having to assimilate and code switch. It wasn't just like assimilating, it was also abandoning the other side of me.
I have been working in some capacity with students with disabilities or children with disabilities since I was like 14.
Like in high school, I was involved in a lot of like leadership roles. And so I was constantly thinking about inclusivity and like how to get as many people involved in as many things as possible, and making sure that people knew that options, resources, and events were available to them.
And then I'll just ask them straight out what to do about inequity in education, I guess. I don't really know what else to do. So I guess my only hope then is that they'll all take that question and apply it to their own lived experience and give an answer that is, full of personal truth. And then if we piece those fragments together, we'll start to get an idea of the bigger picture, an idea of what the answer could potentially someday look like.
Here's my big question. What steps can our country take to fix inequity in education?
God, there's so many. I mean, primarily funding. Well, primarily curriculum, because our curriculum, I think, needs a lot of reassessing in terms of what side of history we choose to present and like how much of the Western canon is spewed onto us, but how much we choose to ignore anything outside of that when there's just so much beyond what is conventional. But yeah, all of that will not happen until there is attention, funding, and like research and direct effort put into that.
It's incredibly important for everyone's emotional and cognitive development, whether that be students with disabilities or students without disabilities, that getting that interaction with people that don't think like you and don't work like you is beneficial to everyone. So when we have issues in education of, should I put the student in the classroom, should I not put the student in a regular ed classroom, it's case by case.
Money is a big one, and financial distribution of resources. I just don't think generally there's enough money in education. I mean, there's no reason we should be in debt for educating ourselves. And it puts people in a position where like only the privileged or primarily the privileged get to seek higher education. So it puts other people at a disadvantage.
To make it known that it's okay to ask questions, I feel like personally the only reason I did was because of my family. I feel like teachers make the environment even though they can't like deal with everything else. Like your classroom is your space, and try to cater that to like kids you're teaching. And
I think the biggest thing we can do is to start by just completely dismantling what we consider education in general. Like the whole idea of education, I feel like, has been very textbook wise, like history. Like this is what happened first, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. And I think that leads for a lot of whitewashing within history in itself. So just talking about like shit that actually happened, like actually talking about slavery in a way that isn't just like, this happened and it was bad and it was a long time ago. Like that shit was recent. There are direct things that affect the way we as a society function because of the things that have happened to Black Americans and to other POC groups. And I think that education starts with laying it out for what it is. Giving us the room as individuals to pick and choose what we are exposed to specifically that will lift us up, I think is what's most important. Just this whole idea of not really trying to teach people things, but trying to give people the room to explore based off information that they're given.
I feel like just making sure like every school gets like the same amount of like funding.
Listening to teachers, teacher salaries. We need to figure out, like, I mean, I feel like Common Core I hear thrown around so much, and it's like, we have like a Common Core and stuff like that, but I have firsthand experience with that, and it's, I don't know, I just don't think it's that effective. We need to give everybody an equal footing, and that starts from bottom up.
I think that it starts with like districting for like elementary and high schools. It's like basically redlining, so all of the rich neighborhoods get the better schools, get the better resources, have the better programs. Also, I think making higher education more accessible and less expensive. Like even loans, if we make it an easier process with lower interest rates, I feel like that could still open the door for a lot of people.
Like being included and being integrated are two different things. So as someone with a disability, I personally feel that yes, I am at a university, I am with different people, I'm in the same classroom and all that. But do I feel integrated with everything that's going on with everyone else? No.
So I guess I will then take all of their individual inputs and take the parts of that are the most personally true and the most raw and cut it together into one final answer. And of course, like 9 college kids aren't gonna make the answer, but they'll make an important answer and they'll make a step. What I've realized as I've been talking out this idea, I think, is that if we want answers to these questions, we have to accept the fact that the answers are going to be as hard and as complex and as contradictory and as frustrating as the questions themselves. And that we have to be willing to put in the time and energy to dissect them and understand them in the same way that we do the questions, if that makes any sense. But who knows? This whole thing could very feasibly not work. There's a pretty good chance of that, actually. This is just the idea I had. And then that will be the end of the movie. What steps can our country take to fix inequity in education?
Getting that interaction with people that don't think like you and don't work like you it's incredibly important.
It's okay to ask questions.
Like being included and being integrated are two different things.
Giving us the room as individuals to pick and choose what we are exposed to, talking about like shit that actually happened. Like
our curriculum, I think, needs a lot of reassessing in terms of what side of history we choose to present, and like there are more perspectives than just what has been taught to us.
Listening to teachers.
Making higher education more accessible and less expensive.
There's no reason we should be in debt for educating ourselves.
All right, that's actually not going to be the ending. Because I was watching back the first interviews and I realized that if I take these people and I just like cattle drive them into giving me this answer, even if the answer is honest or even if I think the answer is good or think it's bad or regardless of what I think about it, it's not doing the most that I can do for this project. It's not promoting a deeper conversation. Because at the end of the day, question and answer doesn't actually get us that far. It doesn't promote critical thinking. It doesn't tell us to dig deeper. That's question and question that does that. So I think I need to be asking more questions, and not questions to try to get answers out of people, but questions to try to get questions out of people and to encourage them to think more about this and then go and talk about it with other people and encourage those people to think more about this. But even if that doesn't happen, none of that could happen if it just ends with question and answer. So it's going to have to be question and question. That's the only way to try to dig deeper. And then that is how the movie can actually end. Do you have any big questions? It could be any questions you have for the world or America or whoever about equity or about education or anything connected to the two. There just shouldn't be an easy answer.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know, like when are we going to start giving a fuck about students' lives? and about Black students' lives and queer student lives, and I just feel like nobody cares. I feel like education is a business, and I feel like a lot of the decisions that are being made are from a business standpoint and not from like a humanitarian standpoint. And so, I don't know, when the fuck are we gonna start like caring about people and having empathy for people and creating policies that make it so that children don't have to like walk into school every single day and worry about whether or not like a kid's gonna come in with a fucking gun.
But this is how a lot my mind works for a lot of social justice issues where people are anti XYZ. I don't know. Why do you care so much?
The counseling system in schools and like the mental health resources that we have for kids, and why is that not a priority? My goodness, I wonder that if we implemented proper counseling and mental health resources and therapy and all of that stuff into the school system and give kids access to that at a young age, I wonder how that would affect the world.
My question is, how is it that we have allowed there to be billionaires in our society, but we haven't allowed like the gap to be closed between homelessness and between poverty? What is the purpose of having one individual with this much money? Like, that is just, to me, that's evil.
What more can you do as a person who lives in America and in a certain state and in a certain city and go to a certain school to ensure that your peers, no matter their race or their gender or their disability, are included?